In a universe where dragons ruled the stars and fire was the mark of nobility, humanity was considered the weakest species until 8-year-old Marcus Chun accidentally incinerated his school cafeteria with a sneeze. What the Galactic Council thought was impossible had just happened in front of 300 witnesses. A human child had breathed dragon fire. Now, as ancient dragon lords descend from their celestial thrones to claim this impossible boy, humanity must face a terrifying truth. Their species might not be as ordinary as they believed. But when gods come calling, even miracles can become curses. Marcus Chun had always been different, though nobody could quite say why. At 8 years old, he was smaller than most of his classmates at New Terra Elementary, with dark hair that seemed to shimmer strangely in certain lights, and eyes that held an intensity unusual for someone so young. His teachers often commented that he was brilliant but distracted, as if he were listening to something only he could hear. The morning everything changed started like any other Tuesday on the human colony world of Kepler, 442b. Marcus sat in the back row of his classroom, trying to focus on Mrs. Henderson's lesson about galactic history. She was explaining how humanity had joined the Galactic Council 50 years ago as a minor species, granted citizenship, but little respect among the great races that ruled the stars. The Draconians, Mrs. Henderson said, pointing to a holographic display showing magnificent scaled beings with wings that could span small buildings, are considered the most noble race in the galaxy. They've ruled for over 10,000 years, and their ability to breathe fire is seen as a divine gift. No other species in recorded history has ever possessed this ability. Marcus felt a strange tingling in his throat. He'd been experiencing odd sensations lately, warmth in his chest, a metallic taste in his mouth, dreams of soaring through clouds of stardust. His parents had taken him to doctors, but every scan came back normal. Just growing pains, they'd been told. The tingling intensified as Mrs. Henderson continued. Fire breathing is not just a physical ability for Draconians. It's tied to their emotional state, their spiritual connection to the universe. They believe that only those with pure souls can generate this sacred flame. A boy named Tommy Bradshaw, who sat 2 desks ahead of Marcus, turned around and whispered loudly, "Good thing we're just boring humans then, right, Marcus? Can you imagine if someone like you could breathe fire? You'd probably burn down the whole school." Several students giggled. Marcus felt his face grow hot with embarrassment. The tingling in his throat became a burning sensation. He tried to swallow it down, but something was building inside him like pressure in a steam engine. "Mr. Chun, are you all right?" Mrs. Henderson asked, noticing his discomfort. "You look flushed." Marcus opened his mouth to say he was fine, but instead of words, a small puff of golden flame escaped his lips. The flame was barely larger than a birthday candle's, but it was unmistakably fire. Real fire. Dragon fire. The classroom fell silent. Mrs. Henderson dropped her tablet, which clattered loudly on the floor. Tommy Bradshaw's mouth hung open in shock. Marcus touched his lips in wonder, feeling the warmth still lingering there. Did you just? Mrs. Henderson stammered. Before anyone could finish the thought, Marcus sneezed. This time, a torrent of brilliant golden fire erupted from his mouth and nose, far more intense than the first puff. The flame shot across the room, melting 2 desks and setting the smart board ablaze. The temperature in the room spiked dramatically, causing the sprinkler system to activate. Chaos erupted. Children screamed and dove under their desks. Mrs. Henderson frantically called for evacuation while trying to protect her students. Marcus sat frozen in his chair, water from the sprinklers mixing with tears of confusion and fear streaming down his face. "Everyone out, now!" Mrs. Henderson shouted, ushering the panicking children toward the emergency exits. Marcus remained seated, too shocked to move. He could still feel the fire inside him, like a newly awakened dragon coiled in his chest. The sensation was terrifying and wonderful at the same time. Principal Williams burst through the door with the school's emergency response team. He stopped dead in his tracks when he saw the destruction. Melted plastic, charred walls, and in the center of it all, a small boy sitting in a puddle of sprinkler water, steam rising from his clothes. "Marcus," Principal Williams said carefully, approaching as one might approach a wild animal. "I need you to come with me, son." The fire department arrived within minutes, followed by colonial security forces. Within an hour, word of the incident had reached the colonial administration. By evening, it had been transmitted to Earth. By the next morning, The story had traveled through hyperspace communication networks to the Galactic Council headquarters on Centralis Prime. Marcus found himself in a sterile medical facility, surrounded by doctors, scientists, and government officials who spoke in hushed, urgent tones. They ran test after test, each more invasive than the last. Scanners hummed around his small body, probes analyzed his saliva, and needles drew sample after sample of blood. Dr. Sarah Chun, Marcus's mother and a xenobiology researcher, fought through the crowd of officials to reach her son. Her face was pale with worry and disbelief. "Marcus, sweetie, are you hurt? Are you scared?" Marcus nodded, unable to find words for what he was feeling. The fire inside him had quieted to a warm glow, but he could sense it waiting, ready to emerge again if he felt strong emotions. "The readings are impossible," Dr. Reginald Voss, the colony's head scientist, announced to the assembled crowd. "His cellular structure shows signs of draconian fire generation organs, but that's genetically impossible. Humans and draconians are completely different species with no shared evolutionary history." General Patricia Morrison, the colony's military commander, stepped forward. Her expression was grim. "Dr. Voss, I need to know if this child poses a threat to colonial security." "I don't think he's dangerous," Dr. Voss replied, though uncertainty colored his voice. "The boy seems to have no conscious control over the ability. It appears to be triggered by emotional stress." Dr. Chun held her son protectively. "He's just a child. Whatever's happening to him, we'll figure it out. But he's not some weapon to be studied and controlled." The debate continued around Marcus, as if he weren't there. Officials argued about quarantine protocols, research procedures, and the implications for human galactic relations. Marcus closed his eyes and tried to block out the noise, focusing instead on the strange new awareness he felt inside himself. When he concentrated, he could sense something vast and ancient stirring in the depths of space. It felt like recognition, as if something had been waiting for him to awaken. The sensation sent chills down his spine. 3 days later, as Marcus sat in a supposedly secure medical facility surrounded by Earth's best scientists, the unthinkable happened. Long-range sensors detected massive objects entering the Kepler 442 system, objects that registered as draconian dreadnoughts, ships that hadn't been seen in human space for decades. Dr. Chin burst into Marcus's room, her face filled with a mixture of terror and amazement. "Marcus, we need to leave. Now." "Why, Mom? What's happening?" She knelt beside his bed, taking his small hands in hers. "The dragons are coming, sweetheart. They're coming for you." Through the facility's windows, Marcus could see the first of the great ships descending through the atmosphere. They were beautiful and terrifying, massive constructions of living metal and crystalline structures that seemed to breathe with their own inner light. Each ship was easily the size of a city, and their presence made the very air around them shimmer with heat. The facility's communication systems crackled to life with an incoming transmission. The voice that emerged spoke in perfect, melodious English, though it carried harmonics that human vocal cords could never produce. "Humans of Kepler, 442b, we are the celestial wing of House Pyrothane, servants of the ancient flame. We come seeking the child who bears the sacred fire. Surrender him to us, and your world will be spared. Resist, and face the consequences of harboring stolen divinity." General Morrison's voice responded over the comm system, trying to sound confident despite the overwhelming odds. "This is Colonial Defense Command. The child is under our protection. We will not surrender any human citizen to foreign powers." A sound like cosmic laughter echoed through the transmission. "Protection? You speak of protecting a flame with paper walls? The child's awakening has been felt across the galaxy. Every draconian lord knows of his existence. We're not the only ones coming." As if to emphasize the point, more ships appeared in the sky. These bore different markings, different houses, all converging on their small colony world. The sky began to fill with the greatest gathering of draconian forces seen in living memory. Marcus pressed his face against the window, watching the impossible sight above him. Deep in his chest, the fire pulsed with excitement, as if greeting old friends. He didn't understand what was happening to him, but he could feel that this was only the beginning. Dr. Chin wrapped her arms around her son as evacuation alarms began to sound throughout the facility. Outside, the first of the Dragon Lords was beginning to descend, their massive forms visible through the clouds. "Mom, Marcus whispered, his voice carrying an odd harmonic that hadn't been there before. I can hear them calling my name. The golden fire flickered behind his eyes as the greatest crisis in human history began with the awakening of a single impossible child. The evacuation of New Terra Colony was unlike anything in human history. As massive draconian vessels filled the sky like metallic storm clouds, millions of colonists fled toward emergency shelters and transport ships. Yet despite the chaos, Marcus Chun remained remarkably calm in the back of the armored personnel carrier racing toward the colony's military spaceport. Dr. Chun held her son close as General Morrison coordinated the desperate defense efforts through her comm unit. All available ships are to maintain minimum safe distance from the Draconian fleet, she ordered. Do not engage unless directly threatened. General, came a voice crackling through the comm. We're receiving multiple transmission requests from different Draconian houses. They're demanding audiences with the boy. Marcus looked up at his mother with eyes that now held flecks of gold that seemed to dance like tiny flames. They're not angry, Mom. They're excited. I can feel it. Dr. Chun exchanged worried glances with General Morrison. The boy's apparent ability to sense the dragon's emotions was as unsettling as his fire breathing. Marcus, can you tell us anything else about what you're feeling? The 8-year-old closed his eyes in concentration, his small face scrunching with effort. There are 5 big ones. Really old ones. They feel like libraries full of burning books. And they're arguing about something. About me. General Morrison's tactical display confirmed what Marcus had somehow sensed. 5 massive dreadnoughts had separated from the main fleet, each representing a different great house of the Draconian Empire. The ships positioned themselves in a perfect pentagram around the colony world, close enough to demonstrate their power, but far enough apart to avoid accidentally starting a war among themselves. This is unprecedented, Dr. Chen murmured, studying the readings on her portable scanner. According to galactic law, no more than 2 representatives from different houses are supposed to gather in one system without imperial sanction. 5 houses responding to a single human child. Ma'am, interrupted Lieutenant Torres, the carrier's pilot, we're receiving a priority transmission on all frequencies. It's addressed specifically to Marcus Chun. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a being that took Marcus's breath away. The Draconian who appeared was ancient beyond human comprehension, with scales that shifted between silver and deep purple. 2 massive horns curved gracefully from her forehead, and her eyes were pools of liquid starlight. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of millennia. Young flame-bearer, she said, inclining her great head slightly, I am Throne Singer Vexalia of House Stellarum, keeper of ancient memories. Your awakening has shaken the very foundations of what we thought we knew about the universe. Marcus stared at the screen in wonder. The fire in his chest pulsed in rhythm with the dragon's words, as if they were somehow connected. For 10,000 cycles, we Draconians have believed ourselves to be the sole inheritors of the sacred flame. Our entire civilization, our religion, our understanding of cosmic order is built upon this foundation. Yet you, small human child, have shattered that certainty with a single breath. General Morrison stepped forward. With respect, Throne Singer, the boy is a human citizen under our protection. Whatever this means for Draconian beliefs, he remains our responsibility. Vexalia's massive head turned toward the general, and for a moment, stars seemed to explode at her eyes. General Morrison, you speak of protection while understanding nothing of what you protect. This child is not merely human anymore. The sacred flame does not awaken randomly. It chooses its vessels according to purposes we do not yet comprehend. Another transmission signal began, overriding the first. The screen split to show a second dragon, this one with scales like polished obsidian and eyes that burn like miniature suns. His voice was deeper, more aggressive than Vexalia's. House Stellarum speaks of mysteries and philosophy, the newcomer rumbled, but I, Flame Lord Paraxis of House Ignis, speak of reality. The child carries our fire. By ancient law, he belongs to us. Belongs? Dr. Chun stepped forward, her scientific composure cracking. He's not property. He's my son. A third transmission joined the conversation, this time showing a dragon whose scales seemed to be made of living mercury, constantly shifting and flowing. Both houses Stellarum and Ignis missed the greater question, this new voice said with silken menace. I am Shadow Weaver Nethys of House Umbral. If a human can manifest the sacred flame, what else might they be capable of? Perhaps it is not the child who should fear us, but we who should fear humanity's potential. Marcus watched the three dragons arguing about him, as if he weren't there. The fire inside him grew stronger with each word they spoke, and he began to understand that whatever was happening to him was far bigger than a simple genetic anomaly. A fourth voice joined the debate, this one musical and ethereal. Wisdom, my ancient colleagues, wisdom. The screen revealed a dragon whose scales were pure white shot through with veins of gold. I am Songkeeper Lyralii of House Harmony. The child awakening may herald the dawn of a new age. Perhaps the sacred flame was never meant to be ours alone. The fifth and final transmission activated, showing a dragon that seemed to be carved from living ruby, each scale reflecting light like a perfect gem. When she spoke, her voice carried the authority of absolute power. Enough, she commanded, and the other four dragons immediately fell silent. I am Empress Regent Scarlet of the Ruby Throne, first among the great houses, voice of the Eternal Emperor. The child will come before the Celestial Court. This is not a request. The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus could feel the tension radiating from the ships above as the five most powerful beings in the galaxy focused their attention on his small form. General Morrison found her voice first. Your Imperial Majesty, with all due respect, we cannot simply hand over a human child to alien powers, regardless of General. Marcus interrupted quietly, his young voice somehow carrying the weight of certainty. I think I need to go with them. Marcus, no. Dr. Chen Kinet Beside Herson. We don't know what they want to do to you. They want to understand me, Marcus replied, his golden-flecked eyes meeting his mother's. And I need to understand them. The fire inside me isn't going away, Mom. It's getting stronger. What if I hurt someone? What if I can't control it? As if responding to his emotional distress, a small puff of golden flame escaped his lips. The temperature in the carrier immediately spiked, causing the environmental systems to work overtime. Empress Regent Scarlet leaned closer to her transmission screen, her ruby eyes studying Marcus with intense interest. The child shows wisdom beyond his years. He understands that power without understanding is dangerous to himself and others. Dr. Chen looked around desperately at the assembled military personnel, searching for support, but she could see the fear in their eyes. They were afraid of what her son might become, what he might do if his powers continued to grow unchecked. If I go with you, Marcus said, addressing the Dragon Empress directly, will you promise not to hurt the people here? My mom, my friends, everyone on the colony? Scarlet's massive head tilted slightly, a gesture that might have been approval. You bargain for your people's safety before your own. This too shows wisdom. Very well, young Flamebearer. House Ruby pledges that no harm will come to your world or its people while you are under our protection. And the other houses? Marcus pressed, somehow understanding the complex politics at play. One by one, the other four dragon lords gave their pledges, though some did so more reluctantly than others. Marcus nodded gravely, accepting their promises with the solemnity of someone far older than 8 years. Marcus, Dr. Chen pleaded, tears streaming down her face. You don't have to do this. We'll find another way. There isn't another way, Mom, Marcus replied gently, his voice carrying odd harmonics that resonated with draconian speech patterns. This is bigger than just me. I can feel it. Something is changing in the universe, and I'm part of it. The carrier arrived at the spaceport, where a small human delegation was already assembled. Ambassador Chun Wei, Marcus's uncle and Earth's representative to the Galactic Council, waited with a team of diplomatic experts and xenobiologists. Marcus, Ambassador Chun said as they disembarked, I want you to know that Earth's entire diplomatic corps is working on this situation. You're not alone. Thank you, Uncle Wei, Marcus replied, then looked up at the sky where the massive dragon ships waited. But I think this is something I have to do myself. The transfer was arranged with elaborate ceremony. A draconian shuttle descended from Scarlet's flagship, a craft that seemed to be grown rather than built, its hull resembling living scales that shifted and breathed with their own rhythm. Dr. Chen hugged her son one final time, whispering promises to find a way to bring him home safely. Marcus hugged her back, leaving a warm handprint on her lab coat where the fire inside him had briefly flared. As Marcus walked toward the draconian shuttle, surrounded by an honor guard of both human marines and golden-scaled draconian warriors, he felt the fire inside him pulse with anticipation. Each step took him further from everything he'd known and closer to a destiny he couldn't yet comprehend. The shuttle's interior was unlike anything in human technology. Living walls pulsed gently with bioluminescent patterns, and the air itself seemed to thrum with barely contained energy. Marcus took his seat in what appeared to be especially prepared accommodation sized for a human child. As the shuttle lifted off, Marcus pressed his face to the organic window and watched his world fall away below him. The fire in his chest burned brighter as they approached the flagship, as if coming home to where it belonged. Somewhere in the depths of space, in the shadowed regions between stars where ancient things dwelt, other forces took notice of the human child ascending to the dragon ships. The awakening of the sacred flame in an impossible vessel had sent ripples throughout the galaxy, awakening things that had slumbered for eons. The real test was about to begin. The interior of the Ruby Throne's flagship defied everything Marcus thought he knew about space travel. Rather than cold metal corridors, he found himself walking through what appeared to be living caves carved from crystalline formations that pulsed with their own inner light. The air was warm and humid, filled with scents he couldn't identify, but that made the fire in his chest sing with recognition. Empress Regent Scarlet herself escorted Marcus through the ship, her massive form moving with surprising grace through passages that seemed to reshape themselves to accommodate her presence. Her scales caught and reflected the ambient light like thousands of tiny suns. "Your human ships are like dead things flying through space," Scarlet explained as they walked, her voice a melodious rumble that Marcus felt in his bones. "Ours are grown, not built. They live, breathe, and think alongside us. This ship has been my home for 3,000 of your years." Marcus reached out tentatively to touch one of the walls. The crystalline surface was warm beneath his palm, and he could swear he felt a gentle pulse, like a massive heartbeat. "It's beautiful," he whispered. "Beauty is secondary to function, young flame-bearer. But I'm pleased you appreciate it." Scarlet paused before a massive circular door that spiraled open at their approach. Beyond this lies the celestial court chamber, where representatives of the 5 great houses await your presence. "Are you prepared?" Marcus straightened his small shoulders, trying to project confidence he didn't entirely feel. "I think so. But, Your Majesty, I have to ask, what exactly do you want from me?" Scarlet's great head lowered until her ruby eyes were level with his. "We want to understand how you exist, child. For 10 millennia, we have believed the sacred flame was our unique gift from the cosmic forces that govern reality. Your awakening challenges everything we know about ourselves, our place in the universe, and the nature of power itself." The chamber they entered was breathtaking beyond description. It was a perfect sphere easily 100 meters in diameter, with no visible floor or ceiling. Instead, platforms of living crystal floated at various heights throughout the space, connected by bridges of hardened light. In the center, 5 elaborate thrones hung suspended in perfect balance, each one occupied by a dragon lord whose presence seemed to bend space around them. Marcus felt suddenly very small as he was escorted to a platform that rose to meet the circle of thrones. Each dragon was vastly different from the others, representing evolutionary adaptations to different worlds and purposes, but all shared the unmistakable aura of ancient power. Throne Singer Vexalia spoke first, her starlight eyes focusing on Marcus with an intensity that made him feel transparent. "Child of Earth, we have spent the journey here in deep communion with the Flame Archives, searching for any precedent for your existence. We have found nothing. In all our recorded history, spanning over 50,000 years, no non-draconian has ever manifested the sacred fire." Flame Lord Paraxis leaned forward on his obsidian throne, his solar eyes burning with curiosity and something that might have been hunger. "Show us your fire, human child. Let us see what manner of flame burns in a mortal vessel." Marcus glanced nervously at the assembled dragon lords. "I don't know how to control it. It just happens when I feel strong emotions." "Then feel," urged Shadow Weaver Nethes, her mercury scales rippling hypnotically. "Feel the wonder of standing before the rulers of 1,000 worlds. Feel the magnitude of this moment in galactic history." Marcus closed his eyes and tried to access the fire within him. He thought about the journey that had brought him here, the impossible sight of dragon ships filling his world's sky, the weight of expectations pressing down on him. The warmth in his chest began to build, spreading outward through his body like liquid sunlight. When he opened his mouth, golden fire poured forth. Not the wild, uncontrolled burst that had destroyed his classroom, but a steady stream of perfectly controlled flame that danced in the air before the Dragon Lords. The fire formed patterns and shapes as if it were alive and conscious, spiraling through complex geometries that seemed to carry meaning beyond words. The 5 dragons reacted with visible shock. Vexalia's starlight eyes widened. Pyraxis's solar gaze intensified until it was painful to look at, and even the composed Empress Regent Scarlet sat forward on her throne. Impossible, breathed Songkeeper Lyralii, her golden veined scales shimmering with agitation. That is not mere flame. That is the language of creation itself. Marcus let the fire fade, feeling oddly drained but exhilarated. What do you mean? Scarlet's voice carried awe and something approaching fear. The sacred flame, in its highest form, is not merely fire. It is the fundamental force of creation and change that shapes reality itself. Only the most ancient and powerful among us can speak the language of creation, and even then, only after millennia of study and meditation. But I'm just 8 years old, Marcus protested. I don't know anything about languages of creation or cosmic forces. Perhaps that is precisely why you can access it so easily, suggested Vexalia thoughtfully. We dragons approach the sacred flame through the accumulation of knowledge and the weight of centuries. You approach it with the pure intent of childhood, unencumbered by preconceptions about what is possible. Flame Lord Pyraxis stood from his throne, his massive form radiating heat that made the air shimmer. The child's power is remarkable, but we still do not understand its origin. How does a human, a species with no connection to the cosmic flame networks, suddenly manifest abilities that surpass many of our own warriors? Before anyone could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. The chamber's walls flickered to show external views, revealing new arrivals in the system, ships that bore no resemblance to Draconian vessels. Shadow Weaver Nethys hissed in recognition. The Void Seekers. I should have expected they would take notice. Marcus watched in fascination and growing dread as the newcomers became visible. Where the dragon ships were organic curves and flowing lines, these vessels were geometric nightmares of sharp angles and surfaces that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They moved through space with an unsettling wrongness, as if they were tearing holes in reality itself. Who are the Void Seekers? Marcus asked. Empress Regent Scarlet's expression had become grim. An ancient race that feeds on cosmic anomalies and impossibilities. They consume paradoxes, contradictions, and things that should not exist. Your existence, young Flamebearer, would be a feast for them. The lead Void Seeker ship transmitted a message that bypassed all communication systems and spoke directly into the minds of everyone in the chamber. The voice was like the sound of stars dying, cold and infinite and hungry. Dragons of the burning houses, surrender the paradox child to us. His existence creates instabilities in the cosmic order that we are bound to correct. Comply, and we will depart peacefully. Resist, and face the consequences of harboring an impossibility. Pyraxis snarled, flame erupting from his nostrils. The child is under our protection, Void Dwellers. Depart our space immediately. The response came as laughter that made reality itself seem to shiver. Protection? You cannot protect what should not exist. The child's very presence weakens the barriers between what is and what is not. Soon, his paradox will spread, unmaking everything he touches. Marcus felt the fire inside him react to the Void Seeker's presence with what could only be described as revulsion. It was as if his inner flame recognized these beings as fundamentally antithetical to everything it represented. They're wrong, Marcus said quietly, but his voice carried clearly through the chamber. I can feel it. The fire doesn't unmake things. It makes them more real, more true to what they're meant to be. Vexalia studied the boy with new interest. Explain what you mean, child. Marcus struggled to find words for sensations and knowledge that seemed to come from somewhere deeper than his conscious mind. When a fire comes out of me, it doesn't destroy things randomly. It burns away what's false, what doesn't belong. In my classroom, it only melted the synthetic materials, the plastic desks, and the artificial board. It didn't touch the wooden ones or anything natural. Songkeeper Lyraliai's melodious voice carried excitement. The child speaks of purification fire, the legendary flame that reveals truth by consuming lies and artificiality. Such fire was spoken of in our most ancient texts, but we believed it to be myth. The external alarms intensified as more Void-Seeker ships began appearing throughout the system. Their presence seemed to darken the space around them, creating zones where stars appeared dimmer and the cosmic background radiation grew cold. "We cannot allow them to take the boy," Scarlet declared, rising from her throne. "Alert all houses. We stand together in this matter." "Your Majesty," Marcus said, his young voice cutting through the growing tension. "What if I went to them willingly? If it would protect everyone else?" "Absolutely not," Pyraxis roared, his flame filling the chamber with searing heat. "The Void-Seekers do not negotiate or show mercy. They would unmake you utterly, erasing you from existence so completely that you would never have been born." Marcus felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. Through the chamber's transparent walls, he could see more ships arriving. Not just Void-Seekers, but vessels bearing the marks of a dozen different galactic powers. Word of the impossible human child had spread, and it seemed like half the galaxy wanted to claim, study, or eliminate him. "There's something else," Marcus said quietly. "Ever since I got on the ship, I've been hearing whispers. Not words exactly, but something deeper. The fire inside me is trying to tell me something." Vexalia leaned forward intently. "What kind of whispers?" "Like there are others. Other people like me, scattered across the galaxy. The fire is calling to them, waking them up." Marcus met the Dragon Lord's starlight gaze. "I think I'm not the only human who can do this." The implications of his words hit the assembled dragons like a shockwave. If Marcus was not a unique anomaly, but the first of a new kind of human, it would change everything: the balance of power in the galaxy, the nature of the cosmic order, and the future of both humanity and dragonkind. As the first Void-Seeker ships entered weapon range of the Draconian fleet, Marcus felt the fire inside him surge with unprecedented intensity. Whatever was happening to him was accelerating, and he had the distinct feeling that the real test was yet to come. In the depths of space, in hidden colonies and forgotten worlds, other human children were beginning to dream of fire. The battle between the Draconian fleet and the Void-Seekers began not with weapons fire, but with a war of realities. The Void-Seeker ships didn't simply attack. They began to unweave the space around them, creating zones where the normal laws of physics ceased to function. Stars flickered and went dark, gravity became inconsistent, and time itself seemed to stutter and loop. Marcus watched from the safety of the celestial court chamber as the dragons responded with their own cosmic powers. Streams of sacred fire lanced through space, not merely burning, but actually reinforcing reality wherever the flames touched. It was like watching gods wage war with the fundamental forces of existence itself. "The child must be moved to the inner sanctum," Empress Regent Scarlet commanded as the ship shuddered under the assault of weapons that attacked the very concept of matter. The Void-Seeker's reality distortions could tear him apart on the quantum level. But as the Dragon Lords began to escort Marcus deeper into the ship, he suddenly stopped, his eyes wide with wonder and alarm. "Wait," he said, his voice carrying new harmonics that made the crystalline walls of the chamber ring like bells. "Something's happening. The whispers, they're getting louder." Through the chamber's viewing walls, space itself began to shimmer with new arrivals. But these weren't ships. They were tiers in reality through which beings of pure light stepped into normal space. As they materialized, Marcus gasped in recognition. "Humans," he whispered, "but they're different." The figures floating in space were indeed human in basic form, but they blazed with inner fire that made them visible across the vast distances of interplanetary space. Men, women, and children of every age and ethnicity, all burning with the same golden flame that dwelt within Marcus. They moved through the vacuum as easily as walking through air, protected by aureoles of sacred fire that bent space around them. Throne Singer Vexalia's voice carried awe and something approaching fear. The awakened. The ancient prophecies spoke of this, when the cosmic flame would kindle in a new species, heralding an age of transformation. The lead figure among the burning humans was a woman who appeared to be in her 40s, her hair streaming with literal fire as she approached the flagship. When she spoke, her voice resonated directly through the ship's living structure. "Dragons of the burning houses," she said, her words carrying absolute authority. "I am Captain Elena Vasquez of the Earth Colonial Defense Force. 3 days ago, I was a normal human officer. Then, the child's awakening reached across space and lit a fire in my soul that I never knew was there." Flame Lord Pyraxis leaned forward on his throne, his solar eyes blazing with intensity. "How many of you are there?" "Thousands awakening every hour," Elena replied as more burning figures continued to materialize around the fleet. Children in classrooms suddenly breathing starfire. Adults on distant colonies discovering they can survive in the vacuum of space. The elderly finding themselves renewed by flames that burn without consuming. The change is spreading exponentially. Marcus felt the fire in his own chest pulse in harmony with the flames surrounding the ship. Each new awakened human added to a growing chorus that sang in frequencies beyond sound, creating a symphony of transformation that reached into the deepest parts of space. The Void Seekers responded to this new development with escalated aggression. Their reality-unweaving weapons focused on the burning humans, attempting to erase them from existence. But where their attacks struck, the sacred fire simply burned brighter, turning the assault into fuel for even greater power. "Impossible," hissed Shadow Weaver Nethes, her mercury scales rippling with agitation. "The Void Seekers' weapons unmake things that should not exist. Yet these humans are becoming more real, not less." Marcus closed his eyes, feeling the connection to his awakening species flow through him like a river of molten gold. When he opened them again, they blazed with the same inner fire that marked the transformed humans floating in space. "They can't unmake us," he said with certainty that surprised everyone, including himself. "Because we're not an anomaly or a paradox. We're what humans were always meant to become. The dragons have had their age, now it's our turn." Songkeeper Lyraliai's melodious voice carried wonder and concern. "But what does this mean for the cosmic order? For the balance that has maintained peace for 10,000 years?" The answer came not from Marcus, but from the space around them. As more awakened humans arrived, they began to demonstrate abilities that went far beyond simple fire breathing. Some moved through space-time itself, appearing in multiple locations simultaneously. Others sang harmonies that caused nearby asteroids to bloom with impossible life. A few began weaving new realities from pure intention, creating pocket universes that existed alongside, but separate from normal space. "We're not here to replace the dragons," Elena Vasquez said, her burning form now close enough to the flagship that her voice resonated through its hull. "We're here to complete them. Look around you. See what happens when human creativity meets draconian wisdom." Where the burning humans and the dragon ships intersected, something unprecedented was occurring. The sacred fire was merging and transforming, creating new forms of both energy and matter. Dragon ships began sprouting additional sections that followed human architectural principles, while the awakened humans found their flames taking on the deeper cosmic significance that the dragons had cultivated over millennia. Marcus felt himself at the center of this transformation, his consciousness expanding to encompass the growing network of awakened minds. Through their connection, he could perceive the Void Seekers not as destroyers but as a necessary part of cosmic balance, forces of entropy that challenge creation to prove its worth. "The Void Seekers aren't evil," he announced, his young voice somehow carrying to every being in the expanding battlefield. "They're afraid. They've been the guardians of cosmic order for so long that they can't accept change, even positive change." Empress Regent Scarlet studied the boy with new respect. "You would show mercy to beings trying to erase you from existence?" "Not mercy," Marcus replied, golden fire beginning to emanate from his small form. "Understanding. They're fighting so hard because they think we're going to destroy everything they've protected. But what if we could show them we're here to create, not destroy?" Without waiting for permission from the Dragon Lords, Marcus walked to the chamber's central platform and raised his hands toward the Void Seeker fleet. The fire inside him erupted outward, but instead of the destructive force he'd shown before, this flame carried pure intention, the desire to build rather than burn, to understand rather than conquer. The sacred fire spread from the flagship to every dragon ship in the fleet, then leaped across space to embrace the awakened humans. As it touched them, their own flames transformed, becoming more than energy or heat. They became communication itself, a language that spoke directly to consciousness without need for words. When the fire reached the Void Seeker ships, instead of attacking their reality-unweaving defenses, it offered them something unprecedented, a vision of cosmic order that included change as a fundamental principle rather than a threat. The response was immediate and profound. The Void Seekers' assault faltered as their hive mind grappled with concepts that challenged their most basic assumptions about existence. Their ships stopped their reality distortion attacks and instead began to listen. Through the Firelink, Marcus felt their ancient consciousness touch his own. They were old beyond imagination, beings who had witnessed the birth and death of galaxies, who had devoted their existence to maintaining the stability that allowed life to flourish. The discovery that change itself could be a force for order rather than chaos sent shockwaves through their collective being. The largest Void Seeker vessel began to approach the flagship, its geometry-defying hull rippling with new patterns that somehow seemed less hostile. When it spoke, the voice that had once carried the sound of dying stars now carried something that might have been curiosity. "Small awakener," it said, addressing Marcus directly, "you show us patterns we have not considered in 10 billion years of existence. How can transformation strengthen order rather than weaken it?" Marcus found himself standing at the center of what might be the most important diplomatic moment in galactic history. Around him, dragons who had ruled for millennia waited for his answer. Above him, awakening humans blazed with newfound power. And before him, ancient guardians of cosmic order opened their minds to new possibilities. Because, Marcus said simply, his child's voice somehow carrying the wisdom of the flame that burned within him, nothing stays the same forever. Even order has to grow and change, or it becomes just another kind of chaos. You've been protecting the galaxy like it's a museum, but maybe it's time to start treating it like a garden. The implications of his words rippled through space, touching the consciousness of every being in the system. The awakening of humanity wasn't just a new chapter in galactic history. It was the beginning of a fundamental transformation in how the universe itself understood the relationship between order and change. As Marcus felt the network of awakened human minds growing stronger by the moment, he realized that the real adventure was just beginning. The fire that had started in a school cafeteria was becoming something that would reshape the very foundations of reality itself. And somewhere in the depths of space, even older forces were beginning to take notice of the small human child who had just convinced the guardians of cosmic order to reconsider the nature of existence itself. 6 months after the awakening began, the galaxy had transformed beyond recognition. Marcus Chun, now 9 years old but carrying himself with the dignity of someone far older, stood on the observation deck of the Harmony Station, a massive structure that had grown from the cooperation between dragons, awakened humans, and even the reformed Void Seekers. The station itself was a marvel that defied previous understanding of architecture and engineering. Draconian biotechnology had merged with human innovation and Void Seeker reality manipulation to create something entirely new. Living crystal corridors pulsed with networks of sacred fire, while spaces that existed in folded dimensions provided infinite room for the growing community of transformed beings. Through the transparent walls of the observation deck, Marcus could see the construction of what the Galactic Council had officially designated as the first collaborative city, a space habitat where multiple species worked together using combined technologies that surpassed anything previously imagined. Dragon ships had evolved into hybrid forms that incorporated human design principles, while human vessels now pulsed with the living energy that characterized Draconian craft. The transformation continues to accelerate, reported Dr. Sarah Chun, Marcus's mother, who had become one of the leading researchers studying the awakening phenomenon. She now bore a faint aura of golden fire herself, though she remained fully human in appearance. We've confirmed awakening events in over 2,000 star systems. The fire doesn't seem to be bound by distance or genetic factors. It's responding to something deeper. Empress Regent Scarlet, whose massive form had been modified with human-designed interface systems that allowed her to work more closely with the smaller species, nodded her great head. The cosmic flame recognizes need and potential rather than biology. We have documented cases of other species beginning to manifest similar transformations. Not fire, necessarily, but fundamental changes that align them more closely with cosmic forces. Marcus walked to the center of the observation deck, where a holographic display showed the current status of the galactic transformation. Bright points of light marked worlds where awakening events continued to occur, while flowing lines showed the growing network of communication and cooperation between previously isolated systems. The Void Seekers have reported something interesting, announced Captain Elena Vasquez, whose role had evolved from military officer to liaison between the awakened humans and the various galactic powers. Her form still blazed with inner fire, but now it was controlled and purposeful rather than wild and destructive. Their deep space monitors are detecting responses from regions of the galaxy that have been silent for millions of years. Shadow Weaver Nethys materialized beside them. Her mercury scales now shot through with golden veins that pulsed in harmony with the station's living systems. Ancient species that retreated from active galactic involvement are beginning to stir. The transformation the child initiated is reaching far beyond what any of us anticipated. Marcus felt the truth of their words through the fire link that now connected him to thousands of awakened beings across the galaxy. Through their shared consciousness, he could perceive vast movements in the cosmic order. Not just the awakening of humans, but a fundamental shift in how reality itself was organizing. It's not just about us becoming more powerful, Marcus said, his young voice carrying harmonics that resonated through multiple dimensions. The fire is teaching us to work with forces that have always been there, but that we never noticed before. Songkeeper Lyrelii approached, her white and gold scales now incorporating patterns that seemed to shift between dragon design and human artistic sensibilities. The child speaks truth. The sacred flame was never truly ours alone. We simply learned to hear its voice before others. Now that voice is calling to all species capable of growth and cooperation. Through the observation deck's walls, they could see one of the most remarkable sights in the new galaxy. A massive Void Seeker construct working alongside Dragon bioships and human engineering crews to build what appeared to be a gateway of some kind. The project had emerged from the combined knowledge of all three species, aimed at creating stable passage between distant regions of the galaxy. Flame Lord Pyraxis, whose obsidian scales now bore intricate patterns of human origin, rumbled with satisfaction. The irony is profound. The Void Seekers, who once sought to preserve cosmic order by preventing change, now help us build the very tools of transformation they once opposed. Because they understand now, Marcus replied, watching the construction through eyes that blazed with gentle fire. Order isn't about keeping everything the same. It's about making sure change happens in ways that create more possibilities instead of fewer. The conversation was interrupted by an alert from the station's communication systems. A new presence had entered the system, something vast and ancient that registered on sensors as both material and energy, living and artificial, individual and collective. Unknown vessel, came the transmission from the station's traffic control. Please identify yourself and state your intentions. The response came not through communication channels, but directly through the fire link that connected all awakened beings on the station. The voice was unlike anything they had encountered. Older than the Void Seekers, more complex than the dragons, carrying harmonics that suggested vast intelligence distributed across multiple dimensions. Greetings, children of the new flame. We are the architects of deep time, builders of the cosmic framework within which your species have grown and changed. We have watched your transformation with great interest. Marcus felt the fire inside him resonate with recognition. These beings were connected to the source of the sacred flame itself, the cosmic forces that the dragons had learned to channel but never fully understood. We have come to offer you a choice, the architects continued, their words rippling through space-time itself. The awakening you have initiated is spreading beyond this galaxy. Other cosmic structures, other forms of life beyond your current comprehension are beginning to respond. You may continue as you are, growing and changing within the boundaries of known space, or you may accept the responsibility of becoming gardeners of existence itself. The implications were staggering. Through the firelink, Marcus could perceive glimpses of what the architects meant. Vast networks of galaxies, alternative forms of matter and energy, dimensions where life took forms that challenged the very definition of existence. Dr. Chun stepped forward, her scientific mind grappling with concepts that stretched the boundaries of human understanding. What would such responsibility entail? The cultivation of consciousness throughout the cosmic framework, the architects replied. The guidance of transformation across scales from the quantum to the galactic. The protection and nurturing of all forms of life that seek to grow beyond their current limitations. Marcus felt the weight of decision settling across the entire network of awakened beings. Through the Firelink, he could sense the discussions erupting across hundreds of star systems as dragons, humans, reformed void seekers, and other awakening species grappled with the offer. Empress Regent Scarlet spoke with the authority of 10,000 years of leadership. This is a decision that affects not just our species, but the future of existence itself. We must consider carefully. There is time for consideration, the architects assured them, but not infinite time. The cosmic framework is approaching a phase transition. Either conscious beings will guide that transition toward greater complexity and possibility, or unconscious forces will drive it toward simplification and stasis. Marcus closed his eyes and reached out through the Firelink, feeling the thoughts and emotions of awakened beings across the galaxy. He sensed excitement and fear, wonder and uncertainty, but underlying it all was something that had become the defining characteristic of the awakening: hope. We don't have to decide as separate species, Marcus said, opening his eyes to look at each of the assembled representatives. The fire has taught us that cooperation creates possibilities that none of us could achieve alone. Maybe that's the answer the architects are looking for. Through the observation deck's walls, they could see the gateway construction reaching completion. The combined technologies of dragons, humans, and void seekers had created something that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, a doorway that could connect not just distant regions of space, but different scales of existence itself. The gateway, throne singer Vexalia observed, her starlight eyes reflecting new understanding, was not just a construction project. It was a test. Could we learn to work together despite our fundamental differences? Captain Vasquez nodded, her fire-wreathed form moving to stand beside Marcus. And we passed. Every species contributed something essential. The dragons provided the life force channeling, humans brought creative adaptation, and the void seekers offered reality stabilization techniques. As if responding to their growing understanding, the completed gateway began to glow with a light that seemed to contain all colors and none. Through its aperture, they could glimpse vistas that defied description, spaces where the laws of physics were more like suggestions, where consciousness itself took material form, where the very concept of existence expanded beyond anything they had previously imagined. The first step toward becoming gardeners of existence, the architects observed with what might have been approval, is learning to create rather than merely consume or preserve. You have demonstrated this capacity. Marcus felt the fire inside him pulse with anticipation as he realized that everything that had happened, from his first accidental flame in a school cafeteria to the transformation of galactic civilization, had been preparation for something even greater. We accept, he said, speaking not just for himself, but for the entire network of awakened consciousness that now spanned multiple star systems. But we do it together. Dragons and humans and void seekers and whoever else wants to help tend the garden of existence. The response from the architects carried harmonics of deep satisfaction. Then, let the next phase of cosmic evolution begin. As Marcus watched the first exploration teams prepare to step through the gateway into dimensions where the very meaning of life would be expanded and redefined, he felt the fire inside him settle into a warm, steady glow. The scared 8-year-old who had accidentally breathed flame in a school cafeteria was gone. In his place stood a young gardener of existence, ready to help nurture consciousness and possibility across scales that span from the quantum to the cosmic. The real adventure, the cultivation of existence itself, was just beginning. Through the Firelink that now connected awakened beings across multiple galaxies, Marcus felt millions of minds turning toward the future with hope, wonder, and the unshakable determination to ensure that consciousness, cooperation, and creativity would shape the cosmic framework for eons to come. The age of the gardeners had begun.